So you've probably heard me refer to this, I've said jobs, right? Like you want to run this job later or something like that. That term refers to cron jobs. And so I don't actually really know why it's called cron. I assume it's something to do with like chronological. But the idea of cron is that you have some task and you want it to be run at some interval, right? So maybe I have like a logs folder, and I want that logs folder to take all those logs, upload them to a server, and then delete them. And I want that to happen every hour, right? You can use cron to do that. So how do you do that? Well, there's a couple ways of doing it. One, which works for Ubuntu but doesn't necessarily work for every distribution of Linux. There is a etc cron folder, and then etc.cron.daily.hourly.monthly and .weekly. If you put a script in there, it will just run daily. I don't actually know what time it runs at, but it will just, you can be guaranteed that that task is going to be run daily. So if we come back over here to my shell here, let's just close that one. And I go to etc cron, and I hit tab. You can see that there is a cron daily, a cron hourly, a cron monthly, and a cron weekly. As long as it has like the correct permissions and everything set, and that it's an executable file, it will run that every hour, every monthly, as long as that script is inside of that folder. So I don't think any of these will have anything in them. I mean, we can check etc cron.hourly or monthly. Nope. So these are empty. Oh, look, there is some for daily. So you can see here, aptitude has one that's run, password has something that it's running, a port, app compatibility. Like these things have put things into this cron folder for them to be run every, looks like day, right? So these are all running daily. And keep in mind, your computer has to be running for the cron job to run, right? It doesn't run while it's off. I think that makes sense, but sometimes bears mentioning. So this works. This is a totally valid way to do it. Sometimes you need a bit more granular control. Like maybe you need something to run during off-peak hour, right? Like, so if you're going to be transferring a bunch of data off of your server and into your database, you don't want to do that during peak traffic hour. You want to do that at like 2 a.m. when most of your users are sleeping. So that's when cron is going to come in handy. Oh yeah, so just the one thing to make sure, if you're putting something inside of these cron folders, make sure you give it the chmod plus x. It must be an executable file, right? That's the one thing I'll tell you. All right, so let's go into our my bin again, my bin, and let's make a new file in here. We'll call it vi make new file, like that. And I'm going to put in here my hashbang /bin/bash, and I'm going to chmod plus x make new file. Okay, so now I have this make new file, and I'm going to vi make new file, and I'm going to put in here make dir -p temp-files. I'm going to cd into the temp-files, and I'm going to touch file dash, and then I'm going to do a sub command here for the date plus %s .txt. So what does this do? Remember, $ parentheses, that does a sub command, so this is going to run some sort of command, and whatever it returns is going to put in here. The plus is telling it what format you want the date in, and the %s is the Linux timestamp or the Unix timestamp, right? So it's how many seconds have elapsed since January 1st, 1970. Okay? So all this is going to do is it's going to create the folder, cd into the folder, and it's going to create a new file with the file dash timestamp .txt. That's all it does. So actually, just to show you, I'll show you how to run this as well. Okay, so I'm going to write and quit here. If I run this date plus that, right, it'll just be a long number, right? So this is how many seconds have elapsed since January 1st, 1970. Okay? Now, if I run make new file like that, and I go into, what did I call that? Temp files. You can see here it created that. But let's say I want this to be run every minute. Well, let's go do that. I'm going to say cron tab -e, and then it's going to ask you what editor you want to use to edit your cron tab, and you can use Nano. That's where you can see there it says it points at this being the easiest. And definitely do not say 4. We learned that ED is not the one that you want to choose. And you can use, I actually don't know the difference between Vim Basic and Vim Tiny, but I'm going to go with 2 because that's just Vim. But you feel free to use Nano if you want to. Okay. Notice these are all comments. This is kind of like leaving you some helpful comments of how to interact with this, but I'm going to show you. So the first thing you're going to do is there's how many stars here? 5? Yeah. So star, 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 star. And then you want to put the thing that you want to run. So in my case, I want it to run the command that I want it to run, which is make new file, which is going to be in /home /ubuntu /my_bin /make new file. Okay, so it's going to run this command, right, which we made sure that has the right executable permissions, which is great. So let's talk about these stars for a second. This stars is letting Linux know, or cron rather, I want this to run on, if this is for minutes, this is for hours. Let's see, yeah, minutes, hours, day of the week, the month. Oh, sorry, yeah, day of the month. So this is the date. So like this would be like, let me start over. This is minutes, hours, day of the month. So this will be like the 25th day of the month or the 3rd day of the month. This is which month to run. And so you can say like only run this every December. And then the day of the week is here. So this is like run only on Sundays or run every on Tuesdays. Okay. So let's just go and do an example here. If I replace this with 5, this would run every hour on the 5th minute of the hour. Or if I did this, 25, this would run every hour on the 25th minute of the hour. Or I could do 5, 25, and this will run on the 5th and the 25th minute of every hour. If I do this and change this instead, this will run every 12th hour, right? Yeah. So as you can see here, I get wildly confused because when I think about cron tabs, and thank God for Cron Guru. This is exactly what I do every single time is I come to this lovely website, crontab.guru, and I just enter this in until I get what I actually expect. So this will translate cron tab speak into Brian speak. So if I do this, oh, that's okay. So that's what this does is it's going to run every minute past hour 12, right? So it's going to run for 1 hour basically every day. But if I do this, it's going to run at 12:05 exactly every day. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, it's confusing, but it's also powerful enough that you can refer to what you actually need to do. So this runs every minute if I do it this way. Or here, it'll run at minute 1 every single hour. Or if I put here at the end, this will run every minute on Mondays. This will run every minute of every Monday that is the first day of the month. So not frequently, I think is the answer to that question. All right, so most of the time I'm not really in here messing too much with it. Like I'll either come in here and like say, I want this to run every hour, which will be like something like that, right? Or you can do this like, I want this to run every 30 minutes. If you put the /30, that means I want this to run every, whatever this is divisible by, right? So if I do this, this would be every 2nd minute, every 5th minute, every 10 minutes, so on and so forth, right? And there's also a couple of them that you can do like this daily. This would be every day at midnight, this would run. Another useful one is reboot. This will run every single time that you reboot the computer, it'll rerun it. You could also do that from your bash RC if you're doing it from interactive shells. So anyway, crontab.guru, just go in there, mess with it until it says the English that you anticipate it saying. That's exactly what I do. So for hours, I want it to run, let's say every 2 minutes. So I'm going to put /2 there, and I'm going to right quit. And then if you're doing it through crontab-e, it'll automatically restart the cron tab and it'll start running it. So right now we have just the one file in there. So eventually, within the next couple minutes, hopefully we'll see it create another file and it'll keep going. And keep in mind, if you leave it there, it will continue running every 2 minutes as long as your computer is up. Another thing to keep in mind while we're waiting for this is I put this in, so this is actually going to run this as root, right? Because I didn't specify a user, and by default, it'll run it as root. Again, not something I would typically suggest you doing. I would suggest you do this as crontab-u Ubuntu, so run it as u, or create a new user and run it as the user, and then do this. So you can see here, yeah, it's still in there. Oh yeah, so yeah, that's good. And you can see there, it created a file. I didn't actually run it. That was the cron tab that actually ran it. Oh, and by default, I guess it does run it as you. So I guess I could come in here and say, run this as root if I had something that had to be run as root. Oh, and then you have to do sudo. So now I would be doing this, and this would be running as root. But in general, you want to run it as yourself or another user with less permissions than root.